before reading this para, or shall we first read the para and then... No, I'll give a small resume of the previous para so that we get the sense of continuity. So Swami has told us that ascent is there in the evolution upwards. But when we keep going up higher and higher, we need not lose contact with the lower. That should not be rejected. That is what many Indian yogas do. They give up. They give up the lower, the physical world, the vital world and the mental world. They give up and they enjoy only the higher levels of consciousness. But Swami is saying that's not necessary, and that's what he has said in this way. So I'm reading out the summary of what he has said in the previous paragraph. At the human level, two particularities are to be noted. Two particulars. First of all, he develops the capacity to look down upon the lower grades from his vantage point of mental observation. He looks at the animals, he looks at matter, and then he observes very carefully and understands their laws and masters them. That's what Swami is saying. He uses consciousness and power to become master of all he sees below his own level. What is below his own level? Animals, plants, and also matter. Matter, science is very concerned with matter. So you try to master all these things below you. He deploys his knowledge and will to subjugate the lower externals as well as the internals. That means when he looks at himself and in his vital he sees selfishness, jealousy, anger, greed, he tries to control these. The lower externals are the animals, the plants, and even matter. He masters them and uses them for his own benefit. But he also tries to master his internals. That means his psychological failings in the mental, vital and bodily parts. He controls rivers, plants, animals to improve his own condition. This is my language, not Cerebral's language, but this is what he meant. Right? He controls rivers, plants, animals to improve his own condition. But he also masters his own physical and vital psychological needs, which are often selfish, impure, perverted. He develops ethics, morality, without rejecting his lower members. He modifies and transforms them. So in this way, ascent and integration both are now seen in man's life. So this is what he has said. Now we will read the para that we have to read with this downward eye of knowledge. So who will read? Yasmin, you have the text?
Yes, please, I can read.
Go ahead, read.
This downward eye of knowledge and will, with a view to an all-round heightening, deepening, and subtler, finer, and richer intensification, is the secret spirit's way for the beginning. The plant soul takes, as we may say, a nervous material view of its whole physical existence so as to get out of it all the vital physical intensity possible. For it seems to have some intense excitations of a mute life vibration in it. Perhaps, though that is difficult for us to imagine, more intense relativity to its lower rudimentary scale than the animal mind and body in its higher and more powerful scale could tolerate. The animal being takes a mentalized sense view of its vital and physical existence so as to get out of it all the sense value possible. much acuter in many respects than man's as mere sensations or sense emotion or satisfaction of vital desire and pleasure. Man, looking downward from the plane of will and intelligence, abandons these lower intensities, but in order to get out of mind and life and a sense, a higher intensity in other values, intellectual, aesthetic, moral, spiritual, mentally dynamic or practical, as he terms it, by these higher elements, he enlarges, stabilizes, and elevates his use of life values. He does not abandon the animal reactions and enjoyments, but more lucidly, finely, and sensitively mentalizes them. This he does even on his normal and his lower levels, but as he develops, he puts his lower being to a severer test, begins to demand from it, on pain of rejection, something like a transformation. That is, the mind's way of preparing for a spiritual life still beyond it.
Okay, so what we'll do, we'll give a summary first so that we understand what he is saying. And then we'll go into detail and see all the words. As evolution rises to the level of man, leaving the animal behind, the human being becomes conscious enough to look all around him, and he tries to master what is around and below him. He uses his knowledge and will to become master of his environment. This is very obvious. Okay, so the secret soul in plant, being at a material vital level, extracts and takes the maximum out of matter and life. Okay? The intensity of this physical vital force is strong, much more so than the animal, which now is at a higher level of physical vital vibrations. So what Simran said is interesting. He is saying that the physical vital force in plants is stronger than in the animals, because the animal has got some other capacity which the plant does not have. So there is a little bit of a sacrifice. You get something, but you lose something. Exactly in the same way, the animal has got instinct, but it doesn't have mind. Man has got mind, but loses his instinct. So that's what Simba is saying. The intensity of this physical vital force is strong, much more so than in the animal, which is now at a higher level of physical vital vibrations. The animal has more than the plant. It has a physical mind, which the plant does not have. Therefore, in comparison to the plant, it has less of the purely physical vital force. The physical mind is more important to the animal than the vegetal vitality. When the evolution comes to man, he has a mind of intelligence in excess to the plant or animal. He's got something more, intelligence. Man occupies himself with this new element, abandons the lower intensities of vitalized matter and mentalized matter. His urge towards intellectual, aesthetic, ethical and spiritual activities take the first place over other lower occupations. The lower intensities are not abandoned fully, but are taken up, enlarged, subtilized, intellectualized. He begins to seek for a higher perfection, unlike the animal, which remains satisfied with what nature has provided it. This is what Sandhya is saying in this paragraph. But we can go into details and see the language that he is using. Okay? This downward eye of knowledge, which is knowledge he is looking at matter which is below him, plants which are below him, and also animals which are below him. He is looking at them, observing and benefiting. This downward eye of knowledge and will, with a view to the all-round heightening, deepening, and subtler, finer, and richer intensification, is a secret-filled way from the beginning. The plant soul takes, as we may say, a nervous material view of its whole physical existence so as to get out of it all the vital physical intensity possible. We know that the plant is interacting with the environment, taking in water and using the light which is coming from above and the water from below. So it is interacting with the universe and its environment and taking the maximum benefit out of them for its own life. So that's obvious. If it doesn't have light and water, it will not be able to grow. So this plant does that. As you may say, a nervous material view of its whole physical existence so as to take out of it all the physical vital intensity possible. For it seems to have some intense excitations of a mute light vibration in it. Mute because it cannot speak, it cannot express itself, but it receives light vibrations. It tries to also convey through vibrations, but not very successful. Perhaps, though that is difficult for us to imagine, more intense relatively to its lower rudimentary scale than the animal mind and body in its higher and more powerful scale could tolerate. So the plant cannot tolerate the physical mind that the animal has. So it tries, its physical nervous vibrations are more than that of the animal. The animal being takes a mentalized, the animal being takes a mentalized sense view of its vital and physical existence. Note the language very interestingly. The plant is using its tactile sense to get the water and the light. But the animal is interacting. The animal can move. The plant can't move. Okay. So the animal has got a physical mind and it is using its senses and mentalizing them. Okay. So the animal can do that because then it gets values out of what it is seeing. So it is mentalized. The animal being takes a mentalized sense view of its vital and physical existence so as to get out of it all the sense value possible. Only sense value, not the mental value. It is using the mind at a very low level. Sense value possible. Much acuter in many respects than man's as mere sensation or sense emotion or satisfaction of vital desire and pleasure. See, the animal has got certain faculties which we can't have. For instance, the animal can sense pheromones. That's how they locate the male animal senses the pheromones and locates the female. That human beings can't do. So animal has got all these things which we can't. Animal also has got instincts. For instance, the elephant knows exactly where the water is and leads the herd there. We can't do that. Okay? But the animal can do that. That's what Sandra is saying. The animal being takes a mentalized sense view of its vital and physical existence so as to get out of it all the sense value possible, which man can't do. Much acuter in many respects than man's as mere sensation or sense emotion or satisfaction of vital desire and pleasure. Now he comes to man. He has spoken about the animal, he has spoken about the animal, now he is speaking about man. Plant, animal and man. Man, looking downward from the plane of will and intelligence, abandons these lower intensities. He loses instinct, for instance. which the animals have. But in order to get out of mind and life, a sense higher intensity in other values, intellectual, aesthetic, moral, spiritual, mentally dynamic or practical, as he terms it. These intellectual, aesthetic, moral, spiritual, the animal absolutely never has. Definitely. It has got practical intelligence, but not intellectual intelligence. Aesthetic. The animal does not appreciate beauty. Okay? So, moral and spiritual, mentally dynamic. But by these higher elements, he enlarges, subtilizes, or actually you don't pronounce the B, subtilizes and elevates his use of life values. He does not abandon the animal reactions and enjoyments, but more lucidly, finely, and sensitively mentalizes them. This he does even on his normal and his lower levels, but as he develops, he puts his lower being to a severe test, begins to demand from it, on pain of rejection, something like a transformation. He sees in his vital, he sees things which he does not like and he wants a transformation. Anger, jealousy, okay, selfishness, all these things he does not like and he wants transformation. That is the mind's way of preparing for a spiritual life still beyond it. So the man looks below, sees the limitations and wants something higher. Now we come to the next paragraph. So somebody has to read. Who will read? Archana, can you read? Do you have the text? Otherwise, somebody else can read. Seema, can you
Shall I
read?
read? Yes, Ranga, I can read. I'm reading.
Okay.
Yes, Ranga, I'm reading.
Go
Am
ahead.
I audible?
Yeah.
But a man not only turns his gaze downward and around him when he has reached his higher level, but upward towards what is above him and inward towards what is occult within him. In him, not only the downward gaze of the universal being in the evolution has become conscious, but its conscious upward and inward gaze also develops. The animal lives as if satisfied with what nature has done for it. If there is any upward gaze of the secret spirit within its animal being, it has nothing consciously to do with it. That is still nature's business. It is man who first makes this upward gaze consciously his own business. For already by his possession of intelligent will, deformed ray of the gnosis though it be, he begins to put on the double nature of Satchidanand. He is no longer like the animal, an undeveloped conscious being, entirely driven by Prakriti, a slave of the executive force, played with by the mechanical energies of nature, but has begun to be a developing conscious soul or Purusha, interfering with what was her sole affair, wishing to have a say in it and eventually to be the master. He cannot do it yet. He is too much in her meshes, too much involved in her established mechanism. But he feels, though as yet too vaguely and uncertainly, but he feels that the spirit within him wishes to rise to yet higher heights, to widen its bounds. Something within, something occult, knows that it is not the intention of the deeper conscious soul nature, the Purush Prakriti, to be satisfied with his present lowness and limitation, to climb to higher altitudes, to get a greater scope, to transform his lower nature. This is always a natural impulse of man as soon as he has made his place for himself in the physical and vital world of earth and has a little leisure to consider his farther possibilities. It must be so, not because of any false and pitiful imaginative illusion in him, but first because he is the imperfect, still developing mental being and must strive for more development, for perfection, and still more because he is capable, unlike other terrestrial creatures, of becoming aware of what is above the mind of supermind, of spirit, capable of opening to it, admitting it, rising towards it, taking hold of it. It is in his human nature, in all human nature, to exceed itself by conscious evolution, to climb beyond what he is, not individuals only, but in time the race also, in a general rule of being and living, if not in all its members, can have the hope, if it develops a sufficient will, to rise beyond the imperfections of our present very undivine nature and to ascend at least to a superior humanity, to rise nearer, even if it cannot absolutely reach to a divine manhood or supermanhood. At any rate, it is the compulsion of evolutionary nature in him to strive to develop upwards, to erect the ideal, to make the endeavor.
Yeah. Very interesting para. So what he's saying is that in the plant life, it uses whatever is available to it, and it doesn't do anything more than that. It just takes from the environment. The animal looks downward; it doesn't look upward. So that also is a capacity in animal which is superior to that of plants. Plant is only using light and water, but the animal is using matter and also plants for its own benefit. Okay, even matter it uses. Animals use matter. They lick salt and they see other things also. So there is definitely they use even water. They need water also. So the animal does that, but it looks down. And man looks down, but he also looks up. That is what Selva is saying. That makes him different. So he can now possibly make a spiritual life. Basically, this is what he's saying. Let's read the sentences one by one and see what he says. Okay? So we have more than 15 minutes. But man not only turns his gaze downward and around him when he has reached his higher level, but upwards towards what is above him and inward towards what is occult within him. So this animal cannot do. Certainly it looks around and looks down, but it cannot look up, nor can it look into yourself. The capacity of self-analysis is not there in the animal. Okay? That's what I'm saying. Upwards towards what is above him and inwards towards what is occult within him. By the way, the word occult here means secret. Secret, it is there within him. In him, not only the downward gaze of the universal being in the evolution has become conscious, but its conscious upward and inward gaze also develops. Now what Simba is saying is very interesting. He has suddenly brought in universal being. So he is saying that the individual is actually one small portion of the universal being which is looking downwards. Man is only a representative, a minor representative of the universal being. So see how suddenly he has brought in much larger issue. In him, in man, not only the downward look gaze of the universal being. He is not saying man's individual being, no. He is saying universal being. Man becomes now a small part of the universal being. In the evolution, so it is a universal being which is evolving, and now we have to study that in man. Of the evolutionary being, universal being in the evolution has become conscious, but it's conscious upward, and inward gaze also develops. It becomes conscious of itself. The animal becomes conscious of life around it, but not of itself. But now it's conscious, but it's conscious upward and inward gaze also develops in man. The animal lives as if satisfied with what nature has done for it. It gets its food, it gets its reproduction, it becomes successful, that's already satisfied, nothing more than that. If there is any upward gaze of the secret spirit within its animal being, it has nothing consciously to do with it. It may be there, but it is not concerned with it. That's what I'm saying. That is still nature's business, not the spirit. Okay. So, the animal lives and is satisfied with what nature has done for it. Nature and cat. So, body, mind, life. If there is any upward gaze of the secret spirit within its animal being, so there also Surrender is saying, but it is there. The secret being is there in the animal. It is there even in matter. But the animal is not concerned with it because it is not conscious of it. It has nothing consciously to do with it. That is still nature's business. It is man who first makes this upward gaze consciously his own business. Very clear difference between plant, animal and man. For already by his possession of intelligent will, deformed ray of the noses though it may be, okay, though it be, okay. So, Chandra is saying the intelligent will in man is a deformed gnosis. Gnosis, supramental. Remember, though it be, he begins to pour on the double nature of Satchidananda. Double nature of Satchidananda, let's see what it means. He is no longer like the animal, an undeveloped conscious being entirely driven by Prakriti. So now it becomes clear what he means by the double nature. The double nature is Purusha Prakriti. In other words, consciousness and force. Up to the animal level, it is mainly force that is acting. In matter, it is force. In plant, it is force. In animal, largely force. But when it comes to man, Purusha becomes also important. He is no longer like the animal, an undeveloped conscious being entirely driven by Prakriti, nature, a slave of the executive force. Okay, so force is put as cap, remember? Shakti, played with by the mechanical energies of nature. The mechanical energies of nature are the matter, force and mind, but mind does not come at the animal level. By the mechanical energies of nature, but has begun to be a developing conscious soul or Purusha, interfering with what was her sole affair, wishing to have a say in it, and eventually to be the master. So, what do you mean by developing conscious soul of Purusha, interfering with what was her sole affair? The force, the purely material force. Purusha is now beginning to interfere with Prakriti. Isn't that normal? That's exactly what science is doing. Science is using its intelligence and consciousness to benefit from matter, plants and animals. So it is interfering with what is below it. Okay. So this is a very interesting word. Purusha begins to interfere with Prakriti at the human level. Before that, Purusha is not interfering with Prakriti at all. It is Prakriti which is dominant. Okay. We know that very well. That in matter there is only force. In plant there is force slightly highly developed. In animal also is mainly force. Beginning of mind capacity is there in the animal, but in man that beginning of mental capacity becomes Purusha. More developed consciousness. Purusha interfering with what was the soul affair, wishing to have a say in it. Okay? I want to use matter for my own benefit. I want to use plants. I want to use even animals. I can use them as beasts of burden. I can also use them for taking me from here to there, transport like horses or bullocks for tilling the land. So man is interfering with what is below him and using it for his own benefit. That's what he's saying. Wishing to have a say in it and eventually to be the master. It becomes master of plants. That's what happens now when man comes first. He only uses what nature is there, what nature is giving him. But finally he starts developing. He develops agriculture. Agriculture is something that the primitive man does not have. So it's a huge, and then horticulture. He has only one banana tree or a mango tree, but now he does horticulture, he can reproduce and produce more. So he is using matter, plant and animal for his own benefit. So he cannot do it yet. Do what? Become master. And eventually to become the master. So note the word eventually. First he can't be total master. He cannot do it yet. He is too much in her meshes. Who is her? Nature. We are completely dominated by nature. Okay? Too much involved in her established mechanism. This Chandra is using different words, but it means that man is not free at all. He is completely dominated by his body, his vital and his mind. It is universal nature which is guiding him, or sometimes misguiding him. But he feels, though as yet too vaguely and uncertainly, that the spirit within him wishes to rise to yet higher heights, to widen his bounds. So the man who is introspective, the one who has got the capacity to introspect, he realizes that he has to rise even higher into the spirit, not the primitive man. He cannot do it yet, he is too much in her meshes, too much involved in her established mechanism. Established mechanism, matter like mind. But he feels, though as yet too vaguely and uncertainly, that the spirit within him wishes to rise to higher heights, to widen his bounds. Something within, something occult, knows that it is not the intention of the deeper conscious soul nature, Purusha Prakriti, to be satisfied with its present lowness and limitations. Now why is Chandra saying something? He is not talking of self and psychic being, because he is being proportionate to man when he is not conscious of his psychic being. That's why he is saying something. He could have said psychic being or self, but he is not saying that because he is at that level. Man is not conscious of it. That's why something. He feels vaguely that something is there, superior within myself. Okay? Something occult, something within, something occult, knows that it is not the intention of the deeper conscious soul nature, Purusha Prakriti, to be satisfied with its present lowness and limitations. There is a phrase in the Bible, man does not live by bread alone. So his necessity is being satisfied. His something inner, something within wants more than that. That's what Sandra is saying. His material needs being satisfied, he has to have now non-material needs, superior needs. That is not the intention of the deeper conscious soul nature, the Purusha Prakriti, to be satisfied with his present lowness and limitations. Actually, even modern man mostly is satisfied with his present lowness and limitations. So simply saying man has the capacity in himself to climb to higher altitudes, to get a deeper scope, to transform his lower nature. This is always a natural impulse of man. As soon as he has made his place for himself in the physical and vital world of earth and has little leisure to consider his farther possibilities. Having once satisfied his physical needs and vital needs, he now turns to higher and nobler activities. That's what Sandra is saying. To climb to higher altitudes, to get a greater scope, to transform his lower nature, this is always a natural impulse of man, not immediately, but as soon as he has made his place for himself in the physical and vital world of earth and has a little leisure to consider his farther possibilities. It must be so, not because of any false or pitiful imaginative illusion in him, but first because he is imperfect, still developing mental being, and must strive for more development, for perfection, and still more because he is capable unlike other terrestrial creatures, of becoming aware of what is deeper than mind, of the soul within him, and of what is above the mind, of supermind, of spirit, capable of opening to it, admitting it, rising towards it, taking hold of it. This is why Srimdu says that in the evolution, up to the animal level, the evolution is slow and unconscious. When man comes, man can himself become conscious and become an element of the higher evolution. So it's a very, very important step in evolution when man appears on the scene. He said that in many other places also in different ways. It is in his human nature, in all human nature, to exceed itself by conscious evolution, to climb beyond what he is. Not individuals only. Sorry. Not individuals. Now Srimdu introduced another idea, the collective idea. Until Srimdu, the yoga was mainly individual. But now Srimdu is talking of of universal evolution. Not only mental evolution, mind evolution, man evolution, but also collective evolution. Okay? He introduces his idea very strongly. I said, where is it now? Not individuals only, but in time, the race also, in a general rule of being and living, if not in all its members, can have the hope, if it develops a sufficient will, to rise beyond the imperfections of our present very undivine nature and to ascend at least to a superior humanity, to rise nearer, even if it cannot absolutely reach, to a divine manhood or supermanhood. So, very clearly, Srimdu introduces a new idea which is not there because of evolution. He says that collectively also there should be an evolution, which is not there earlier. This is a very, very characteristic element in Srimdu's view of things. Because not only the individual, but society also must be able to rise to higher levels. At any rate, it is the compulsion of evolutionary nature in him to strive to develop upwards, to erect the ideal, to make the endeavor. So, very clearly, he brought the evolution from matter to life to man, to plant to animal, and now to man. So, man has the possibility of rising even higher than his own nature. So, this is what he has said. So, we have 2 minutes more. What we can do is, I'll read out a summary which would sort of hammer in the essence of what he's saying here. The developed man, I'm reading my summary. The developed man looks around him, turns his attention not only to what is below him, but also to what is above and within him. The animal has a static condition. It rests satisfied with what nature has given it. It lives only at a Prakriti level. But man, not satisfied with nature within and without, turns upon her for further development. He turns upon nature. He is a Purusha Prakriti level. His mind is a diminished ray of the supermind. Therefore, he strives to rise in consciousness, power and bliss. Consciousness, power and bliss. Satchidananda. He may not succeed fully at first because he is still imprisoned by his outer physical nature. But the urge towards perfection distinguishes him from all other beings in creation. This is what he has said. Okay? So, we can stop here today because it's time and we will take up next time. But where is the limit of effectuation? Page 745, but where is it? Okay? Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Ranga.
Okay.
Aroha Dada.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ranga.
Today is Karinal. Karinal is the last day of Pongal. So, Sankranti is when? Is it today or was it? Kiran?
Yes, it was yesterday, Ranga.
It was yesterday.
on 14th.
Yeah.